This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
Okay, so I saw my buddy David Beebe, great guitarist, terrible guy. We were just chatting this morning, and first of all, it came out that he's watched the Superman film like 8 times, which is just unreasonable. And so is my buddy Deep Impact. So let me know in the comments what you thought of the Superman film. If you've seen it, did you like it? But he mentioned that Boss have come out with this pitch shifting pedal, which looks like it might sound really good. I'll chat to Leon and ask him what he thinks of it. Andertons had apparently done a video of it, so I kind of just checked out, just see what that pedal was called and stuff. And then I saw that there'd been a video like a couple of days ago with Chappers and Lee, and it was talking about expensive amp versus expensive guitar. And I haven't watched the video, but in the thumbnail I saw that they had one of these Victory hand-wired amps. I think myself and a few of our friends, we talked about this in the past a little bit, because I'm not necessarily a stranger to an expensive amp or two. But that Victory amp in particular, I think is like a really interesting sort of case study, like to see what is the market out there for like a 5-6 grand amplifier in 2025. And to me personally, I think where I've landed on this is that I'm never going to spend that kind of money on an amp again. I don't think. And I mean, even like a vintage tube amp, I don't think I'm in that market either. And this video is just kind of going to explore some of these things, but maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree here, but I think there's actually a sensible way around some of this. In this intro here, you're going to hear me flipping back between like a 3.5 grand Fender Custom Shop and a £120 Fender Squier Debut. And the amp I'm going to be using is a Fender Deluxe Reverb, and also from Gear for Music, like a £20 Heartwood pedal for the drive. So let me know in the comments as well whether you feel like there is a clear difference in tone, where you think the most important aspects of the tone are coming from, and then let's reconvene afterwards, and we're going to chat about like signal chain and which parts seem to matter most. to me, like, the most logical thing that makes sense on this is to buy, like, I think mid-priced gear, not the super expensive stuff. So I don't know if you could kind of get a sense in that video. So that was like the cheapest Telecaster you could buy, one of the more expensive Telecasters you could buy without going down the route of like either vintage or master built. And I mean, honestly, to me, they sound quite similar. And to me, they also sounded quite good. They're going into Deluxe Reverb Reissue. So this is, I think, about £1,500-ish, £1,450, something like that. Like the price fluctuates a bit. But this is the thing. This is, I would say, not an expensive amplifier. It's not the cheapest amplifier, not the most expensive. And I think this is generally like the thing that I would say is probably what I've found mostly with most gear. Most of the time it tends to be that you don't need the most expensive thing ever. You don't necessarily want the cheapest thing ever. Somewhere in between this grey area, this boring grey area, is the stuff which actually is going to get a job done nicely, that you're possibly not going to feel super guilty about spending money on. But honestly, for me as well, this Deluxe Reverb, so I got this used for £800-ish. To me, it sounds absolutely amazing and takes pedals really well. Been sort of like a thing where I can't really, from this point, imagine going back to the situation. So I did buy, off of my buddy Jake, a Two Rock Classic Reverb. And it's just like, I owned that amp for a little bit, and it was like a weight on my shoulders, like the weight of owning an amp that was that expensive, that I knew that I just wasn't going to use that much. And ultimately, I've got a 1965 Pro Reverb down here, which I think would be kind of difficult to sell because it's not that original. It's got 2 EV speakers in it, but it's also kind of a great sounding amp, really cool. Would I buy it again? Probably not. Would I buy the 1965 Deluxe Reverb again? I think so. I think that's what I've found. Like, there's also the VHT D50, which are, I don't know if they're discontinued at this point, but those were relatively inexpensive. Typically what I found is like the cheapest amps, to me, are not quite as good as like this sort of thing. But I'm sure there are some decent cheaper amps out there. So I think of some of the Fender stuff that I've tried at Project Music as well. They've got like various sort of Blues Junior type things, or things slightly up from that. Like, there's a whole range of decent sounding amps there as well. And I think this is the thing for me. Like, it's not about the most cheap thing. Oftentimes the most cheap thing might not inspire you quite as much for various reasons. For me, it's also not about the most expensive thing either, because, again, that's kind of not as inspiring in some ways, because it's like you had that feeling of it being like a thing that's not super affordable, or not at all affordable, even if you could afford it. So I could afford that Two Rock Classic Reverb when I bought it, but for some reason it weighed on my sort of conscience that I'd got an amp that was that expensive that I wasn't going to use. It's a whole weird thing. Now, pedals in particular, I think you can get some really great results from cheaper stuff. Whether they'll last quite as long as the more expensive ones or have like a good warranty and stuff is stuff to look into. Guitars, another thing I would say. So here's a guitar that John Martin, who's looked after my... wow, that feels amazing. Looked after my Ibanez Roadstar and also my Tokai. This is a guitar that he's kind of pieced together from much cheaper parts. I think it's Squier parts, generally. But he's kind of made this into his own sort of thing. And I think that is a bit of a lesson for me, that sometimes a cheaper instrument with a bit of work can be made to feel like that. Neck feels absolutely stunning. Can be made to feel like something much more expensive. This has been refretted. I think the frets were falling out of it, he'd said. He's got some Spurzl tuners on here, which maybe... these feel lovely. maybe might be something that I might look into putting on my Tokai Gold Star, but the guitar doesn't have to be like bonkers expensive to still be. That body as well feels amazing. It's filled in all the holes as well. That's John, you've done incredible work. I'd not seen this until now, but yeah, that's really really cool. And he's done that with the neck joint. So obviously this is like a luthier job with a guy who knows his way around some tools. But maybe that's something that could be said for something like this, where it's like it starts off as a cheap thing, and all guitars, start off, especially these days, as roughly like a similar sort of thing, like a piece of wood chucked into a CNC machine. I mean, that's obviously not exactly how it goes. Like, it's a lot more care than that goes into these things, but I don't think you have to go for the most expensive thing to get a really, really good result. So that, for me, the amp is the area where I think you can spend like enough, and there's a point where, I guess with all of it though, isn't it, where you spend enough and you can get to a point where actually it's good enough that pretty much whatever you put in front of it is going to sound pretty decent. I think the amp might be a slightly more important part of that particular puzzle, as I found there. Like if you plug the cheapest Telecaster you can buy into a Deluxe Reverb, it does sound pretty good, I think, and not worlds away from, like, that's a custom shop. And not only that, but if I took this cheapest Tele, gave it to John, and maybe put in a decent set of pickups, then I'd probably close even more of that tonal gap. So I think it's not necessarily that you don't need to spend any money on any amp at all, although, modelling wise, you could go into like an FM3 Helix Native and all that sort of stuff, which I do all the time. You don't need to spend crazy money on that sort of stuff to get some really good results, in my opinion. So yeah, how do you feel about that? I honestly just feel like, for me, I'm happy with the Deluxe Reverb, knowing that is an amp that I could probably get another used one for about £1,000, and that's probably the route that I'd go down. With the guitars, I still feel like there is something different when you spend a bit more money, but I do also think we're getting to the point where, some of these guitars, like, new prices to me are a little bit bonkers. A used expensive guitar, so something that was expensive when it came out, like the PRS Silver Sky, again, if you spend like 13, 14, 15, 1600 on one of them, I think you get a great guitar for the money. So for me, it's not about expensive guitar and expensive amp, it's more about finding a used thing of each, which kind of gets you the best of both worlds. Just buy used, I guess, is my conclusion, innit? And find a great tech. I need to play that guitar.